And thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. President Trump unveils his tax reform plan today as he nears his 100th day in office. From an increase in deductions to a drop in taxes on business, the administration is expecting their overhaul to lead to a boost in economic growth. Caitlin Burke is on this story.
Massive tax cuts? Check. President Trump's tax plan expected to fulfill yet another campaign pledge. The president's guidelines are expected to focus on cutting tax rates on businesses from 35% to 15%, and cutting taxes plus increasing deductions for individuals. The White House is also hoping to make the tax code much simpler and easier for individuals, even just doing their taxes on a large postcard. And the administration says the cuts will lead to faster economic growth. During President Obama's last year in office, the economy only grew 1.6%. President Trump is hoping for 3%. But many economists worry that Trump's tax cuts will result in higher budget deficits, something Republicans opposed under President Obama. Democrats are not likely to go along with Trump's tax cut, so the plan could have a difficult road in getting through Congress. Still, voters made it clear that the economy, jobs, and higher wages are a top issue for them, and the White House is working on just that. And Wall Street is still optimistic as the Trump rally is alive and well. The Nasdaq closed above 6,000 Tuesday for the first time ever. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
In an unusual move, all 100 senators will attend a classified meeting at the White House today to discuss North Korea. This comes just a day after North Korea fired off its largest artillery drill ever. This fuels growing concerns over the country's threats to the U.S. and its Asian allies.
A North Korean missile with a nuclear payload capable of striking an American city is no longer a distant hypothetical, but an imminent danger.
According to Reuters, the briefing was originally scheduled at the Capitol, but President Trump suggested it take place at the White House. Some of Trump's top cabinet members will attend the meeting, including Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis. Lawmakers are accusing Trump's former national security advisor Michael Flynn of violating federal law. They say he failed to inform the government that he was accepting thousands of dollars from Russian organizations after a recent trip there in 2015. Members of the House Oversight Committee say these actions could land Flynn with a felony charge. The accusations come at a time when lawmakers are investigating if Russia meddled in the U.S. elections. The French foreign minister announced yesterday the chemical agent responsible for the 80 deaths in Syria was sarin gas. Analysis by French experts reveals the blood from one of the victims confirmed the use of sarin. The minister also said the Syrian regime's Air Force launched the airstrikes against the town of Khan Sheikhoun on the morning of April 4th, and that the regime is the only one with these aerial capabilities. French intelligence services also believe only Bashar al-Assad and some of his entourage had the power to give the order to use chemical weapons. The White House is blasting a federal judge's decision Tuesday to block President Trump from withholding funds to sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are communities that protect illegal immigrants and oftentimes do not cooperate with immigration officials. Federal Judge William Orrick issued the preliminary injunction against the president, arguing it was an overreach of his power. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer accused the judge of putting criminals before the safety of American citizens. Some suspect the case will go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Voters in the 5th District of South Carolina are heading to the polls May 2nd. They are voting for a candidate to fill former Congressman Mick Mulvaney's seat. One group is making it their mission to get Christians who don't normally vote to head to the polls. Amber Strong has this story.
After a close congressional special election in Georgia, with the Democratic candidate pulling in 48% of the vote,
we will be ready to fight on and win in June.
Political eyes are now focused on the Palmetto state of South Carolina, where 7 Republicans, 6 Democrats, and 3 independent candidates are all vying to replace former Republican Congressman Mick Mulvaney. Mulvaney made the move to become President Trump's budget director, leaving that spot in the 5th District up for grabs. That evangelical voting bloc that catapulted Donald Trump into the White House in 2016 is here on the ground in South Carolina, hoping to do the same thing for another GOP candidate. Chad Connolly is one of those candidates. He's knocking on doors, reaching out to voters, and promising to bring his faith to the forefront of his campaign.
You know, I think that we as Christians need to start looking at things not as the polls say, not as the experts say. What's the Lord say? What's the Word say? We got to be able to look through a biblical lens when we make decisions, and I really try to live my life that way.
He already has the backing of House Freedom Caucus leader Mark Meadows.
Know Mick Mulvaney very well, the previous congressman, and what Chad has not only demonstrated over time, but certainly has reinforced, is that he won't forget South Carolina when he goes to Washington, D.C.
But despite the support of heavy hitters like Meadows, Connolly knows the real power lies among evangelical voters. It's a lesson he learned as the former director of faith and outreach for the Republican National Committee.
I saw the numbers from Barna's polling that some 80 million people are sitting in churches, but only 30 couple million vote. So really it's our fault, Amber, what's been going on. There's 40 to 50 million people who identify with the Lord and the Bible and their church and a biblical worldview who don't bother to go vote.
One political group is working to change those numbers. The Rampart PAC is a unique kind of political action committee with the sole mission of putting people of faith, including pastors, in office. Taking a line from Francis Scott Key's poem that became our national anthem, the group believes that, like those ramparts long ago, freedom will prevail. They put that belief into action by backing Connolly and others like him, so that Judeo-Christian values can take center stage in Washington. Pastor Mark Harris believes that groups like Rampart PAC are essential when it comes to undoing things like the Johnson Amendment, which forbids churches and other nonprofits from supporting or endorsing political candidates.
We feel like that getting the best candidates into office will take place once you begin to have believers stepping up and churches awakening and pastors really engaging in this process as well.
Harris, who has run for office himself, has a message for fellow Christians who say believers should not be involved in politics.
If you look at the biblical principle, whether it be Moses or whether it be in the New Testament, you look at Jesus, they were engaged in every aspect of life. As a Christian, as a believer and follower of Christ, I can't just pick and choose what areas of life I'm going to choose to live out my faith.
The Rampart PAC is putting its faith and its financial backing behind that belief. Time tells if it will actually pay off. Other candidates on the GOP side have also raised big bucks, with Republican candidate Ralph Norman bringing in $500,000 so far, and Democratic challenger Archie Parnell reportedly raising $250,000. He's hoping to flip the traditional red district to blue. The South Carolina congressional election is May 2nd. Amber C. Strong for CBN News in Indian Land, South Carolina.
Members of President Donald Trump's cabinet are gathering weekly to study the Bible. The vice president and 8 administration officials, including Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Energy Secretary Rick Perry, and CIA Director Mike Pompeo, sponsor the meetings. These are some of the most influential people in the U.S. government meeting weekly to grow themselves spiritually. They're led by the founder of Capitol Ministries, Ralph Drollinger. He says when a country's leaders seek God, it puts the nation in a position to be blessed beyond all that we ask or think. Leaders of the Bible study say President Trump, of course, is always welcome to join them. Still ahead, meet Sharefish, who's living out his faith both here and around the world. Watch how he's going the extra mile. Diet sodas boast fewer calories, but a new study shows they could increase your chances of dementia and stroke. The lead researchers say the study can't establish a cause and effect between the drinks and the possible diseases, but it does suggest more work be done on the effect diet drinks have on the body. Nutrition experts say that what you eat affects your brain, and they recommend vegetables, fish, and whole grains. Another study says exercise will keep your mind sharp after you are older than 50. Oye Osterkamp's life hit rock bottom. He lost multi-million dollars in his business and he became homeless. But instead of giving into despair, he found his answer in helping other people. Lori Johnson brings us this story.
But every June, we take a medical...
Oye Osterkamp is a man who lives his faith.
Every morning when you get up and your feet hit the ground, you're preaching a sermon. You get to choose every day of your life what your sermon is going to be for that day.
Osterkamp runs the Ronald McDonald House in Durham, North Carolina. It provides free room and board to families with kids at the world-renowned Duke Children's Hospital, like Susan Brown, whose son Howell has been here for months.
We found out that he had a pineoblastoma, stage 4 brain tumor, which is very rare. He had brain surgery. We couldn't afford to stay in a hotel.
And a lot of them come here with no place to stay. And a lot of them, families have given all of their resources to the doctors for the one chance their child might get better. And they're totally prepared to sleep in the hospital or sleep in the backseat of their car if they need to.
The sick children often stay at the Ronald McDonald House with their families, like Howell when he's in between chemo treatments.
It's really nice over there. They fix dinner every evening at 6 o'clock, and then on the weekends they have brunch. It's real nice and clean.
First thing whenever they come in the door is they feel loved. That was what we're all about here at the Ronald McDonald House. We're about love, we're about comfort, and we're about peace.
Owie relates to people who feel overwhelmed. Years ago, his multi-million-dollar company bottomed out, along with his marriage. When he was homeless and jobless, he gained a better perspective.
A lot of times, our prayers are, God, give me this, give me that. And I believe what has really helped me is to change that prayer around and say, God, what do you want me to learn from this? God, what can I do in this particular situation that will most glorify you?
Owie discovered helping others is the way out of despair. He wrote about his journey in a book called Being a Sharefish in a Selfish World.
I grew up in eastern North Carolina, and my mama taught me that it's better to be a sharefish than a selfish. And she always had a very giving heart. And she said, the more you give, the more you get in return. And just like it says in the Bible. And I have found that to be true.
For instance, almost all of the money it takes to operate this Ronald McDonald House is given by the local community, which is also very generous when it comes to donating time.
We have one local church here that part of their mission for the year was to come over here every Monday night and cook supper for everybody in the house.
In addition to helping families here in North Carolina, Owie is also changing lives 1,500 miles south of here in the beleaguered nation of Honduras, one of the poorest countries in the world. 6 years ago, on a church mission trip, he realized how lack of education created the cycle of poverty. Since then, his team provides schooling to remote villages, everything needed to make it through high school. It's called Sharefish.
I have felt like I have a family in the United States. I'm very happy and thankful to each one of the persons who has such a big heart to help our children.
Before Sharefish, people here were destined to spend their lives picking sugarcane or cantaloupes. Now they feel they can do anything.
It's 4 of us who have graduated from Sharefish. We're very happy, and that way we serve as an example to the other children so they follow the same path.
The Honduran government provides free education through the 6th grade if students pay for all their supplies, including uniforms. That's too expensive for these families who earn the equivalent of just $3 a day.
The man asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And to us, this is the perfect example of a neighbor, because these folks are forgotten people even in their own country.
Sharefish provides a community center, computer lab, and libraries so parents can learn too. So whether it's in another country or your own backyard, Owie Osterkamp says by serving others, you dramatically improve your own life. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, the American Ninja Warrior who also happens to be a mortgage banker. Grant Clinton talks about the stroke that could have ended both careers. See how this warrior got back in the game after a supernatural healing. The reality show American Ninja Warrior begins its 9th season in June. Competitors make their way through amazing obstacle courses, hoping to win $1 million. But one contestant saw his faith tested just 6 months before competition with an almost deadly diagnosis. Mark Martin brings us the amazing story of his survival.
When you think of a ninja, the image of a stealth figure clad in black probably comes to mind.
5'9", 150. We've seen he has the moves and he has the confidence.
Today's TV ninjas are highly skilled athletes, working their way through intense obstacles on the immensely popular American Ninja Warrior. Grant Clinton is one such competitor. The 39-year-old Texan is in incredible shape. He gave CBN News an inside look at his preparation, high-intensity interval training, conditioning, and moving quickly through tough courses.
Really, the obstacle by themselves lots of times isn't real difficult. It's putting them together and then having enough energy on obstacle 8 or 9 or 10 to be able to not be pumped out with your muscles being just so fatigued and tired. So that's what I'm trying to build that up so they don't get fatigue.
Now Grant trains 5 or 6 days a week, heading to the gym for about 2 hours each day before work. When not training, Clinton is a mortgage banker.
I had a lot of encouragement from the people I was training with. They're like, what do? You know, what's going on here? Actually, Daniel Gill, who's been on the show, he was telling me, hey, you know, you really are good at this. You know, what's your thing? And I was like, I do mortgages.
Clinton also competed as a gymnast in college, which helped to make a better transition to the ninja world. During one typical training session, however, the unexpected happened.
I felt just a huge pressure in my head that I thought was just a terrible headache. I kind of had to step aside for a little bit and figure out what was going on, and the pain just got worse.
He underwent an emergency CT scan, which showed bleeding in his brain. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital for surgery. Clinton's wife, Lindsay, recalls the weight of that moment.
He told me that everything was going to be okay. It's like so fresh, even though it's been so long. He told me that everything was going to be okay, which I knew. It was going to be okay regardless of the outcome. But then he did say, you know, if I don't come out of this, I want you to make plans. I want you to move on with your life. I want you to find a good husband for our children. I mean, it's just one of those conversations you don't really plan on having at our age.
After surgery, Clinton learned he suffered a stroke, a type with a 50% fatality rate.
It was just kind of a big shock to everyone. You know, I worked out all the time. I wasn't overweight. My cholesterol was low. I didn't have any genetic history of stroke.
A week after leaving the hospital, Clinton attended a Christian men's retreat with his church, which focused on healing. He still felt a lot of pain and pressure, and the men prayed for him.
I came in, heavy medication, terrible pain, pressure, and then 2 days later I left with no meds, no pressure, no pain. Seeing the Lord just literally lift that off of me through these men going to war for me was amazing, and it was a miracle.
Clinton eventually resumed his ninja training, and about 6 months after the stroke, he made it on national television. Amazingly, he completed the regional finals, became a crowd favorite, and made it to the nationals. Although Clinton made an earlier exit than he hoped, his story connected with people around the world.
Being a believer, that's what it's all about. Really, it's not about me being up there and performing well. Of course, I'm a competitor and I like to do well. I want to compete well. But God's glory is first. And I want my story, I want the people that have watched me to know what's going on, to know that God is still working miraculously in today's world. It's not only in what we read in scriptures, but He's still doing it today.
And this believer is giving back. While competing, he wore a shirt emblazoned with the word overcomer, which is based on Romans 8:37. After a lot of people asked to buy the t-shirts, Clinton got down to business and donated the proceeds from sales to the Scott Cooper Smith Stroke Awareness Foundation. He hopes to do the same again this season. Looking back, Clinton says it's not clear why he had the stroke, and he's okay with that.
The Lord allowed this to happen so that, again, I could build the faith of the men at my church, so I could encourage and build the faith of those that got a chance to see me on the show. If that's what all it was for, we don't really have to have a reason for it.
And that encouragement resumes in June, along with the chance at $1 million. Mark Martin, CBN News, Houston, Texas.
And you can get more information on the Scott Cooper Smith Stroke Awareness Foundation by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Stay with us. There's more of CBN NewsWatch straight ahead. We'll be right back. Time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is through. You have to go through it to get to it. The operative word there is through. That is not a stopping point. It is simply a moment on the journey. Keep it moving. You will get through whatever your it is. With that word, make this a wonderful Wednesday. And that's a wrap for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. You can get more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Make this a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you right back here come tomorrow. God bless.